human into technology, Gethin Ellis and Mark Williams. Welcome to the 11th edition of the Fit Podcast. Here at gethinellis.com, while we know physical fitness is essential, our mental health is vital too, and our Fit Podcast is all about putting the human back into technology. Now, one thing we can probably all agree on is the last year or so has been unprecedented. So we wanted to seek out the views of technology leaders, business owners, consultants and many others from a range of different organisations to discuss with them the impacts on their business, on their humans and on their technology and how they see the future unfolding. So without further ado, I'll introduce you to episode 11 part 2 where we speak to Tim Golbourn. Okay guys, welcome to part 2. We're still talking to Tim Golbourn, the Interim Finance Director for the Royal College of Physicians. Tim, thank you for staying with us and welcome to part 2. I've got a few more questions just to ask you, really, and I can't remember whose go it is. Is it my go, Mark, or is it yours?
Yeah, crack on.
I'll take the first one. All right. So the first question is all around digital transformation. And do you think most organisations need to transform, or is it more about continual improvement, and why?
Gosh, interesting question. I think it is about improvement, and I guess in part one, I use, try to keep things very simple about some of those core principles that businesses need to address, and I think the same thing is true here. I'm more in the continuous improvement camp, because if you go back to those principles I mentioned about clarity of purpose, about customer service, about good staff engagement, I think what's changed here is the landscape. It is, customers undoubtedly want to engage with organisations in a more digital way, and therefore organisations need to respond to that. And I'm sure, the point's been made many times before. I think there's a huge difference between, dare I say it, sort of legacy typing organisations, those that predate the internet age. You don't have to look whether in the commercial field or the not-for-profit field. It's listed with examples of legacy organisations that have suffered and maybe not undertaken that transformation journey. So I think there's a heightened pressure and a need for, particularly I think, legacy organisations that been around for many years, maybe got lots of staff, maybe have lots of assets, maybe, if we were talking about earlier, wedded to ways of working that are probably, brought up on paper-based or sort of, face-to-face interactions, and really need to transform. So I always, I think the term digital can throw you a bit here, because I very much think of this as transformation. But clearly, the world we live in now is a very digital age, and therefore, by its very nature. But I think what you have to do, particularly those, thinking about the customer service and the staff engagement bit, I think they both have to operate now in a much more digital friendly way. You have to make it, the experience for your customers and the experience for your staff has to be a good one. And if that experience has to be digitally, then it has to be digitally good as well. I mean, I suppose that's the way I would see it. So I think it depends what sort of organisation you are. I guess if you're someone like Airbnb, you've grown up in the internet age. If you're Thomas Cook, as was, you didn't, and that's the difference. And yeah. I think I'm sure it's a point we all understand, but absolutely, I see it about continuous improvement rather than sort of revolutionary type change.
Just as a slight segue from that, Tim, because obviously I know what not what you're responsible for now, but what you've been responsible for, when you and I worked together a little while ago. I kind of think I think retailers are probably the good example of this, though. Yeah, so they're absolutely a lot of them are in this legacy classification that we talked about there, but they've all got a shed load of money basically sunk into infrastructure of one way, shape, or form, buildings, particularly in that case. And I am thinking about the organisation that we
Yes.
we work together in. But because that's it's another example where you've set your stall out to work in a certain way, and you've signed 5-year leases and 10-year leases, and you've configured your building to be a certain way. And the same applies to IT, right? You've configured your IT to work for a certain way. There was a few, but not that many people would have configured their IT to support 100% remote working. Now, your executive might have thought that the IT manager might have done that, but nobody would have told him that that's what he wanted to do. So he'd have assumed that, that 85% of his people are going to be working in the office, 5 days a week. So I think it's a really the question is kind of round about. So what are these organisations going to do? How because they've got this underlying cost base essentially that's eating away money that is perhaps not adding that much value to the clarity of purpose or the customer service and certainly the people interaction side of things. How are they going to take those? There's a lot of hard decisions to take there, and I kind of wonder whether they do have to make a bit of a gamble and structure their stuff, with more transformational stuff in mind rather than continual improvement, which is an odd thing for me to say because I sit in the continual improvement camp, and Gethin knows that very, very well. The word digital transformation drives me up the wall. Despite the fact that it pays my bills.
Yes.
Because it isn't. You just need to get on and do some more stuff that is good for you for why you're doing things and your customers, basically.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good question, Mark, and I think. I read, at the time of the Thomas Cook thing. There was, some analyst or commentator, and again, it stuck with me really. He said, "Look, when organisations fail, they fail very slowly, and then they fail very quickly." And I guess why I'm in the continual improvement camp is I think the smart organisations know that maybe they don't have an immediate burning platform. I think if you've got a burning platform, then you need to act fast, and transformation, I think, by its nature suggests a more sort of urgent, sort of rapid, transition. Whereas I think, it's looking out for the way things are changing, which is why, that thing for me about clarity of purpose, really understanding about what your organization is there to do and who your customers or audience are, or members if you're a membership body or whatever, and really working out how you need to engage with them, service them, continue to attract new ones and retain you, whether it's customers or members or whatever. So I think it has to be continuous because otherwise I think there's a danger of doing things too rapidly and not really being clear why you are doing them. So thinking about Mark, the organisation we worked in and delivered something. It is hard. I think it's very hard because if you don't have that burning platform, people say, well, look, everything's fine. The businesses continue to perform well, and but I think it's about getting binoculars out and looking across the what's coming up over the horizon, and yeah, it is. It's all those sort of analogies, and so that I think becomes the really hard bit is and that's where I think the sort of the good analysis, the data, understanding the market trends and those sort of things come in, because you then got to be quite courageous, I think, to take an organisation down a particular path and invest in, CRM technology or website technology or more sophisticated payment platforms and those sort of things to make the experience much better. When to many, the benefit might not be obvious because actually the business is continuing to perform well. So I think it's hard. I think it's hard in those legacy typing organisations when performance continues to be well, but it doesn't mean that just because it's well today, it's going to be well in 5 years, 10 years time.
I like the Thomas Cook Airbnb analogy. One I talk about a lot is Netflix and Blockbusters.
Yes,
Said Blockbusters were doing just fine. I think Netflix may have taken their idea to blockbusters and they just said, "Oh no, that's never going to work." And then obviously it did, and then all of a sudden the platform was burning, and Netflix came and overtook them, and they don't have all that sunk cost in buildings to rent out DVDs, and I think they tried to do a mail service as well just to try and keep up, and it never quite works. So it does sort of resonate with me. That continual change. If you are in a decline and your platform's not burning, you have the opportunity to change it. But once it's on fire, it's probably too late then.
Yes, I think so. It is, and that's that thing about fail very, very slowly and then very quickly. That's the.
I'd not heard it expressed like that before. I really quite like that phrase, and it's probably quite a good segue actually into the next question, just around because we've talked about. Lots of people talk about data and getting more, more value from their data, and we've talked a bit about technology and a fair bit about people in this conversation so far. Going forwards, how do you think those sort of if those are the three of the main pillars, if you like, of taking a business forwards, data and people and perhaps technology. I'm sure there'll be other things as well, but how do you think those sorts of decisions should be weighted, and how do you get those? How do you get that working together? And a throwaway example to lead it in. When is how do you know when you've got enough data to take a decision to do something? But what do you think of getting the balance right there, Tim, with those areas?
I mean, they're all. I was going to say, you've got three things. I was going to say two sides of one coin, but it's almost like a three-sided coin but they're all part of the same, and I think you have to think of it in those terms. I don't think you can necessarily focus on one at the expense of the other. So technology, people, and data. They're all fundamentally they're all fundamentally important. So I think you have to address all of them, and I think I'm a great believer. I mean, look, there's no such thing as perfection, I think, when it comes to things, and so striving for that perfect data source where the decision that you need to take is going to be blindingly obvious because the data points to it. I mean, I think throughout my career, you've often, yes, your decisions have got to be based on good data, but it's not necessarily going to be perfect data. So you have to make assumptions. You have to take risk because you just don't know. So I think it's I'm never one. This might sound surprising as a finance director to say this, but I'm not always after 100% accuracy. I don't think you I think it's a dangerous place to go to, but I think you need to be sure enough in your data to make good decisions. And I think they are all connected. I don't think. I mean, there's a huge. I mean, the technology side is although it's technology, it is a people-based business. I mean, people operate technology, whether you're involved in actually servicing it and designing it, or whether you're actually using it. I mean, it is a people-based business. Therefore, I think continuing to invest in people as users or developers or business analysts or whatever, or the whole makeup of how these things work is so important. But the data, I think, and probably I think not-for-profit sector maybe a little bit behind the curve in this. I mean, as you see it in business all the time, that data-driven decision-making and huge investments made. And I think it comes back to things like business cases. And again, as a finance director, you're used to that discipline of we want to do X, therefore we've got to invest Y, and in return we're going to get Z. But I think, my discipline, I suppose, has to live with a bit of uncertainty in that. I mean, at the end of the day, they are assumptions, they are plans. But I think you've got to get it as right as you can. But I'd go back to what I said. I don't think you're ever going to get 100% certainty. And I think learning from other places. I mean, this isn't always about reinventing the wheel. I mean, to don't like using those sort of phrases, but I mean, I think you can look to see what other organisations have done. But it is hard, I think, particularly when organisations are cash strapped, to say, look, we need to engage, we need to appoint a business analyst or a data analyst or a data insights person. But actually, those sort of skills, I think, are fundamentally important, whatever sector you're in.
I want to ask you a different question. Apologies to Gethin for just hogging this, but he's not surprised by this. I've not asked this question before, so I probably won't articulate it very well. What you were saying resonated with me, because I was thinking, okay, so historically, many organisations, so take finance or take HR or take IT, broadly, let's say those are the three areas we've talked about. Each division or each department will have come forward to their exec with a business case to do something. We need to do more employee engagement, right? Yeah. That's the HR one. The finance one is we need a new finance system, and the IT one is we need to upgrade to Azure or whatever it is, right? So a lot of business cases are centered around one area wanting to make a case to do something. And what you talked about was essentially, we were talking about people and data and technology, but you talked about all of the areas working together. So do you think that organizations, so I don't think they're doing this, right? So I'm going to say like this. Do you think organizations need to shift and say, apart from, meat and drink type business cases, we need to buy a new server because it's gone, it is falling over type of business cases. Do you think that organizations should move away from a finance department or an HR department or an IT department trying to make a business case to do something, and they should simply say, right, it's not anyone's business case, it's our business case.
Absolutely.
And we need to get this because we got all of the moving parts of our organization, which you could argue is transformation, is moving together. Do you think that's do you agree or disagree with my point that in general organizations aren't doing that, and it's more silo business cases, if you like, that are coming forwards, and if so, what do you think that people should work together more, and they need to culture something somehow that makes them work together?
I definitely agree with that, Mark, and I think how you do it is incredibly hard because again, when you think of legacy organisations, often they're structured in a particular way, and as soon as organisations, there's could talk endlessly about organizational structure and design, but you have to structure an organization in a particular way. You have to divide it into chunks, and that, I think, therein lies the problem. I think because and I think the trick, I think those successful organizations, when it comes to things like you're describing there about business cases, I think I'm always a great believer in trying to think, well, what problem are you trying to solve? And I'd always encourage organizations to think at that the most highest strategic level. We're doing this because we want to grow our membership in this area. We're doing this because we want to give our customers here a much better service than they're getting at the moment. We're doing this business case because we're introducing a new product line or a new service line or something. And I think the way I would see it, if you think about it in those terms, then some of the supporting technologies naturally flow out of that, because if we are going to give, I don't know, a group of customers a better service, that might be as much about the mechanics through which they pay their invoice or paying for an event as it is about the event experience itself. But I think you have to look at the thing end to end. I'm a great believer in that, and I think that the challenge, though, I think is that you don't have you don't necessarily have a director of end to end services. What you have is a director of an operations service alongside a director of finance, alongside a director of HR, or an IT, and you're trying to make these things work. But you have to, I truly believe that to address the point you're raising, you have to look at it as an end-to-end process and look at the whole experience, not just one aspect of it. Because, just imagine, if like the Amazon model, if everything was great in terms of choosing your product, and then you have to call up a number to actually make the payment, and then to hang on the phone for 10 minutes or whatever. I mean, it's never going to work. It's got to be completely end to end. So I think I probably get the point, but I do think that's the challenge in how to make those things work. So rather than seeing as competitive business cases, I think it's about what problem are we trying to solve, but thinking it at the most broadest, highest level. And what's going to bring the organisation benefit
as well? Is what you're saying. Yeah. Great. I'm glad I asked that question. Actually, I think that's really interesting piece of advice for listeners.
And on the subject of advice, it probably leads nicely to our last two questions. I'll take the penultimate one. Mark, you can take the last one. Tim, these are a bit of slightly off the technology data, but it's still in my opinion, some of the most interesting questions that we ask. What advice would you give your younger self or those sort of starting out or changing their careers? We kind of frame that going into IT, but you can frame that in any way. What advice would you give your younger self starting out on your career?
I think wherever you end up, it's a bit of a cliche, but I think it is nevertheless it's not that doesn't diminish its importance really. I think it's like with anything in life. I think the more you put in, the more you get out, and therefore, I guess wherever you are in an organisation, I think it's about not always waiting to be invited to do something. I do think it's sometimes about volunteering or putting your hand up or being prepared to step outside of your perhaps your comfort zone or the confines of your sort of job description. So I've got to be careful here because I'm a great believer in getting the balance right between work and home life, and I think that's fundamental. So when I talk about the more you put in, the more you get out, I don't necessarily mean working longer and longer hours. I mean in an organizational context is thinking a bit beyond your role, thinking a bit more beyond the organization, because I think if you want to progress, then I think the more that you put in, the more you become known, and the more you're able to sort of perhaps take that rounded view of an organisation. And I know it feels hard actually when you're at a very junior level, but I do think that's how people develop. I think is by thinking about a bit beyond their current role. Of course, they need to deliver their current role, but it's that thing about don't always wait to be invited. I think is the key. Do I was on this sort of conference once, and I can't even remember what it was about now. But the thing that struck me is the guy that was speaking. He'd done a lot of work with lions, in Africa, and observing them and everything else. And I remember he put up this one shot, and it was I don't know, this pack of lions. It's a pack of lions, isn't it? I think. Or was it Pride, sorry. And there was about 12 of them sort of all around this sort of this pond or lake drinking. And one of them, just pricks up his ears because he hears something, in the distance, which is obviously, breakfast or dinner or lunch or something. And you almost see the rest of them do it as well. And it's like, they don't wait for the invite, they don't wait for the memo or the email to come out and say, hey Tim, would you like to be invited? Yeah, they're there at the party. They're there waiting to be engaged. And it's something that really stuck with me actually, because I do think there is something there about as an individual in an organisation. Yes, you need the organisation to help and support you, but I think you need to be there yourself. You need to be willing. You need to be receptive. You need to be alert to those things. So I guess, it's not a career one necessarily, but I think it's once you're in the work environment, wherever you are, I think it's universal at whatever level you're at. Really, I think is to. I mean, and certainly I've found it's helped me.
Cool. One of the things that strikes me from not just the answer to this question, but generally from doing these discussions over the last few months, is that you say it's a cliche for some of these things that you've said, Tim, but they're all truisms as well. And I think that the one I before I asked the last question, I wanted to say that is the truism here is there's no such thing as a stupid question. So be inquisitive, be curious, just ask. Oh, what have we got to lose? So with that in mind, what have I got to lose? So tell me a fun fact. Tell us a fun fact about yourself that you're willing to share that perhaps nobody else knows about you.
Oh, I'm almost a bit reluctant to say this one actually, because I think
they're the best ones generally.
They're the best ones, yeah. No, because I think when you say to someone, look, you're an accountant by background, I think they have an image of you being, I don't know, good at maths, and but actually at school, English was my thing. I'm not saying I was rubbish. I mean, I was competent enough at maths and those sort of things. But actually, what really gave me a buzz was English, and so much so that I ended up winning a prize for having a poem published. So there's something about me that people wouldn't necessarily know. Not the grey suited accountant you'd necessarily think of doing that. So.
I mean, we've spent a few years working together. And I had no idea that was the case. Just before Gethin closes and stuff, there's another chap I'd worked with actually in between the times that we'd worked together, who's an IT guy, and he's recently started. Things that he's been doing during lockdown. He started going back to his roots and actually writing some poetry, and he's been publishing that on LinkedIn, and it's it's really quite good. So it's another example of I'm not going to say who it is, right? Never would have thought such and such would have been writing poetry sort of thing. But there you go.
Well, on the poet note, I've as Mark said, I've been reading some books, and the I think it was in part 1 we talked about. Does it make the boat go faster? That wasn't a book. That was something online. And it came from the 2012 Olympics, where there was a rowing team, and everything they did was just focus on making the boat go faster. But the book I was reading was all about sales pitches, and the book was Daniel Pink, and one of the pitches in there was having a rhyming pitch. And he said the best salespeople out there are trial lawyers. And then he went to O.J. Simpson's from the 19th. The glove don't fit, you must acquit. And it's like they reckon that was the line that got the verdict that they needed.
Yes.
So I'll be tapping you up for some for some rhymes for some of my pitches.
I look forward to it.
Fab, cool. On that note, guys, that does bring us to the end of the show. It's the end of part 2, the end of the show. I'll extend my thanks to Tim Golbourn, the interim finance director for the Royal College of Physicians. Thank you for joining us, Tim. It's been a very enjoyable chat.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that, Tim. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, bye.
Don't go away.
Don't go away.